The New York Giants continued their mission to revamp their secondary with their third-round pick, Andru Phillips, out of Kentucky. They selected him at 70. There were some offensive linemen on the board, and you're never going to hear me say, oh, you can't take the offensive line, but Andru Phillips fills a need, and he has a very high ceiling. There are aspects of his game that I still feel need to be ironed out. We'll go over all of those in this video. Tackling, ball production. He had no interceptions in college. All of those things I don't love. But I love the fact that he jumped out of the gym. I love his overall movement skills. He was also a player who wasn't all that efficient with his footwork in college, yet he was still in position and in phase and very sticky. It's because he has burst out of his break to diminish throwing windows in an instant due to his explosiveness. He loses little to no momentum when he flips his hips and then goes straight downward, plant and drive, explosiveness out of his breaks. These are all aspects of Andru Phillips' game that I appreciate. Let's hear what Joe Schoen and Brian Dable appreciate about the young man.
No, I mean, he's sticky. He's in coverage. He's around the football a lot. And watching him down at the Senior Bowl and one-on-ones, he's got a lot of traits. And those are things that we're going to, obviously work on. And he's in position. He's just got to finish a little bit better. But really like the athlete, like the kid, and look forward to him getting here. Told Wandell he's got to be ready for practice because Drew said he was going to be locking him up. So that'll be good competition there.
View him as a slot?
Yeah, yeah. We're going to put. He can play both. He's got versatility to play inside, outside, but we got options because Flott can play inside, outside as well. So.
Another tenet of the draft for the New York Giants in 2024 has been toughness, and a willingness and run support is part and parcel with toughness. Let's hear Andru Phillips talk about why he believes the New York Giants selected him.
They like it's my willingness to tackle. I know it's a thing, especially at those corners, and not people want to tackle, but I'm one of those guys that want to get my nose dirty. And then just my football IQs and just being savvy in it as well. You can be aggressive, but then have some finesse to you as well and go out there and just win every rep.
The fluidity of Phillips will likely lead to a slot role. Flott will compete outside. There's still a lot that can happen. Phillips played 426 snaps on the outside in 2023, 223 in the slot and 44 in the box. I think the entire Tennessee game in 2023 he spent in the slot. So he has a lot of experience there. Is that an interception? Jim Carrey, what do you have to say about this? Damn penalties.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
And with that, let's get into Andru Phillips' tape. All right, this first clip's a little grainy. You'll see my stupid face in the bottom left-hand corner, but you could see Andru Phillips is in a zone technique, inside leveraged against Jamari Thrash. Balls on the far hash, so he's playing inside, forcing the quarterback to throw it over the top. Let's watch the route. Now, initially, Andru Phillips, again, the fluidity. You can watch the footwork, very clean, very crisp. WD-40 on them hips. I'll run the play, and then I'll do my fast forward. I know a lot of people don't appreciate me fast forwarding and going back and forth like that. Sorry. It's just kind of how I watch film sometimes. But you could see, all right, he's committing to possibly this being an outside route. So he's repositioning his hips, Andru Phillips that is, to handle if this is a quick out route. He realizes it's not, and that Jamari Thrash is going vertical, but Phillips believes Thrash is going to go outside. This is a great job by Jamari Thrash to work to the inside to force Andru Phillips to panic, but Phillips doesn't panic. He gets right into the blind spot at this moment, and Andru Phillips has to do another turn, and you could see, gets so turned around. On any other play, cornerbacks are toast in this situation. This is a devastating spot for a cornerback to find themselves in. He gets turned around several times, and this is an issue with Andru Phillips. He isn't the most disciplined with his hips, but his athletic ability and his fluidity allow him to be inefficient. You could see how he turns back to the inside, notices Jamari Thrash is not there, and then locates, closes with, and destroys the enemy by fire and maneuver. No, but you could see, look, whoop, oh crap, Jamari Thrash isn't there. Let me get back, and he's right on top of that route, stride for stride, right in the hip pocket, matching the wide receiver, and then he plays through the catch point. Here he actually locates the football. That's another aspect of his game that he's a little weak at. Locates the football, gets his hand into the catch point, forces the incomplete pass. You see him looking up, get his hand in there, incomplete pass. Not a lot of cornerbacks can get beat twice on a play and still get himself back into phase to force an incomplete pass. And it's not even like if this was a perfect throw. It's not a perfect throw. This is a fine throw outside the numbers, well outside the numbers, towards the sideline. It could be more towards the end zone. But my point is he still was calm and collected and put himself back into phase. That's an aspect of his profile that I think Joe Schoen and Brian Dable do appreciate. It's the baseline athletic traits that allow you to do that. And it's also a mentality thing. He doesn't panic. But again, I wish he was a little bit more patient and disciplined to not get turned around so many times. Here's a play that you saw a little bit earlier in the video. Him in the slot. He gets beat on this play. You can't see it from the initial side of it. Gets right to the hip, shoves out of bounds, doesn't get his head around. Aspect of his game, like I said a little bit earlier, that you don't necessarily appreciate about Andru Phillips. I'm going to see another slot rep. Mirror match skills. He goes to contact, and he kind of misses. The wide receiver does a good job avoiding Andru Phillips here. Goes to the point of being a little bit impatient. But it doesn't really matter because he lunges into the contact and he just stride for stride, works underneath, and gets his hand on the football to force an incomplete pass. And you'll see it a little bit better from the end zone angle. Gains depth in this little side straddle. Tries to make contact. Defender avoids the contact, but he still gets right where he needs to be. You see the little subtle tug after the defender enters his break. Could that be DPI? Sure. Anything is DPI these days against these defenders. But it's not glaring, so it might not get called too frequently. But he puts himself right into position to make a play on the football. So I love the footwork on this play, setting up his hips and getting himself oriented. He's off coverage, aligned initially at the top of the numbers. The stem of the wide receiver is outward leaning, so you can see how Andru Phillips, it's hard to tell, but you can see how he's gaining depth, and then watch the footwork. Plants that inside foot into the ground, gets his hips oriented. Once the wide receiver declares his route, the momentum of the wide receiver, the hips, the shoulders, and the head, and the feet are all angled towards the sideline. You could see how Andru Phillips orients his hips with his feet by planting, and then he's already coming downhill. And that's precise right there. That's precision. That is excellent footwork by Andru Phillips, and it's an excellent drop back as well. And he naturally has a low squatty stance in his back pedal. He's like a freaking python, man, like primed to pounce type of player when he is in his back pedal. And he has a freaking 40+ inch vertical jump. Explosiveness for days. And I think that's Ladd McConkey he's going up against. And you could see the speed turn. Look, he is outside leverage on this play, going up against Ladd McConkey. Outside leverage, smooth back pedal, smooth and explosive back pedal. Ladd McConkey works into the blind spot. Good job. And then the speed turn. You see speed turns all the time in the NFL. You need to execute that technique, and it's a difficult technique for cornerbacks to execute because you typically lose your balance when you do that, and you lose speed coming out of your break. But this is a fluid and controlled mover. He has range. He can move laterally. He has the hips to flip and the body control to not lose balance or explosiveness or speed. Changes direction smoothly as well. Here's just a quick curl route. Recognized. Plant. Almost like a double plant there. Double tap, right? Zombieland fans. Goes right through Jamari Thrash's catch point once again. Forced PBU. So you can't say he has ball skills. Had no career interceptions, right? But I do like when he has a beat on receivers. Because of his closing burst, he can drive through, and he typically uses solid technique when he's at the catch point in these types of situations against stagnant wide receivers, where he can get his outside arm around the hip, and then he can play through with his inside arm. So if he misses the football, you could still control and tackle the defender with that outside arm. You still maintain a level of contact. 2 points of contact with force going through the catch point, of course. Now we're going to see in the slot, motioned player coming into the slot. He doesn't really gain depth, shades a little bit to the outside, takes a step, realizes what's happening, drive to the catch point in quick game. Shane Bowen's going to be using a little bit more depth, a little bit more soft and off coverage. Andru Phillips plays right into that because of that burst, because of the plant and drive ability, the click and close, all of those things, right? Not going to be as much press. You'll see another play of him kind of getting baited to the inside. This is a nice little double move or just a hard jab step at the top of the break by the wide receiver and gets Phillips turned around. But then Phillips' recovery speed, close with back onto the catch point and harass the wide receiver. I think a better throw here, probably this ends up being a completion. And I wish Phillips didn't fall for these double moves so frequently. It's an aspect of his game that, like I said earlier, needs to be ironed out a little bit. But he has the recovery speed to recover, which, and I'm talking about like elite type of recovery speed in that, the NFL level. We see him on these little slant routes, these quick game concepts. He maintains good body positioning against his assignment. And then the closing burst right to the catch point. There's that technique again. Inside forward hand, get to the catch point, subtle control around the hip. So if you miss, you can bring them down. See it on this play as well. Quick mover. I would say against these quick game concepts, he does a solid job recognizing them. And maybe that's one reason why he gets baited by these double moves sometimes, because when the quarterback tips off what he's going to do, he's going to try to drive right through that catch point, possibly come away with some interceptions, although that is not something he did in college. Here's another slot rep against Tennessee. Wish he got his head around. Does not do that. This could be face guarding. And on this play, the receiver gets a step on him, but it ends up going incomplete. I remember watching Jalen Hyatt in 2022, and Andru Phillips was playing him in the slot as well. And there was one play where Jalen Hyatt just vertical sell on a comeback route in the slot, on a curl route in the slot, I should say, right? Just sold it so well. And Andru Phillips bought it and just flipped his hips and started heading north. And Hyatt created a ton of separation. Got me excited about Jalen Hyatt. He really did. Because we didn't really get to see him thrive in year one. But I want to see Phillips be more decisive in these nickel situations. I want to see him be a little bit more certain about where he is going to be. I don't want him to have to rely on his athletic ability so much. I understand why they made this pick. I'm okay with this pick. I had a lower grade, I think, than a lot of my contemporaries in this industry on Andru Phillips, but I get it. I do. Betting on the traits. Inside-out versatility as well. On this play, slight inside leverage from the field side, back pedal. Let's see, low, squatty, balanced player. You see how he starts to open his hips a little early, something he does. But even though at this point he is not in the best position to explode out, he puts himself back into the best position. But you can see how he's starting to open towards the inside because he's afraid that this wide receiver could work into his blind spot if it's a vertical route. So he's positioning himself well in that sense, but it just ends up being an out route, and he's still able to put that foot into the ground, come right out of the break, and get his hand on the football. Little choppy steps at the top right there, you can see, to reestablish himself. But then the burst out, something you love to see. Is a very good route, a very good feel on a double move. See, when he was in this zone technique to the field side, and see a lot of college teams play this to the field side. What I mean by field side, you can see the top of the screen, quarterback is on that hash. The boundary side would be from the quarterback to the top of the screen right now. The field side would be from the quarterback to the bottom of the screen because there's more field to cover. So defenses, specifically in college football, they will play inside leverage on their outside cornerbacks to the field side because that forces the quarterback to throw over the top of them. Not a lot of quarterbacks have the arm strength and the precision to do such. So you can see slight inside leverage, and the offense tries to take advantage of this by running a little double move into the blind spot. You can see him sink his hips. It's a nice little play by the wide receiver, but Phillips doesn't take the bait at all. Phillips has his eyes on the quarterback, zone technique. He's staying on top of this route. You can see how he just transitions his weight just in case, realizes that's not what the quarterback is doing. It was a pump fake, and then just stays over the top, closes with, restricts to the sideline, gets to the bottom of the numbers, and then almost comes away with an interception. Very good play here by Andru Phillips. Very smooth, very controlled, no panic. And for a player who isn't necessarily efficient with his hips, I understand how that can be a sign of panic. I don't think he is necessarily a panicked type of player. There is a calm nature to his transitions, albeit it's not always precise from a technique standpoint and from a positioning standpoint. It's not the same with tackle point. The tackle point, he seems like he's almost too fast for his own good, as you'll see a little bit later on. This ball gets tipped at the line of scrimmage, but you can see the direct path right to the catch point here against Iowa. Ball tipped. Here, Kentucky dropped him from a nickel spot to a cover 2. Works over the top of his receiver. Plant drive, get underneath. Ends up being a completed pass, but you can see how he gains depth and how he explodes out. And I think it's good to just watch his footwork on this play too. in the hips. There's a lot of changing direction. There's a lot of orienting himself to see exactly where this player is going. This player ends up sitting, and he just drops that outside foot, comes right out of his stance. Receiver does a really good job coming back to the football. See the little things, man. I love the little things in football. If this receiver just stayed right on the line, this is going to be an incomplete pass, but the receiver works back towards that hash and splits between the 5-yard markers of where the white lines are, and it's being a completed pass. Good for that wide receiver. We see Andru Phillips do an excellent job staying on top of this Mississippi State post. I hate when they get off the all-22 like that. But game depth, game depth, game depth. Watch the wide receiver. You're on the outside shade portion of him. Just stay on the outside. And then just close with. Stay on top. Throw wasn't even close. Now let's see that feistiness we heard so much about earlier in the video. So one thing about Andru Phillips is when they run screens, the offense towards his side, not only does he play like Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal, like a man with his hair on fire, an absolute maniac. Maybe he sells ice cream, I'm not sure. But he flies downhill, and he actually does a good job boxing wide receivers or the receivers inside to pursuing defenders. Or if he has to, he uses the sideline to his advantage to force the receiver towards the sideline as well. This is a box technique. He's going to press the wide receiver who is blocking him. He's going to press his shoulder strong upfield and then present his numbers to force a cut back to the inside. Now, I wouldn't advise the kick. Respect the kick. If you're not cheating, you're not trying, but that's going to get a flag. So please don't do that, Andru Phillips. But you can see how he presses this wide receiver so hard, his outside shoulder so hard, that he's able to force that cut back to the inside, and there's just nowhere for the receiver to go who actually catches the football. Good technique from Andru Phillips, and he has a lot of plays like this. This is a smart play from Andru Phillips. Now we're going to see more plays of him in run support. For a cornerback, and this is why he's going to fit well as a nickel, we'll get into the tackling woes. It has nothing to do with his mindset. I can guarantee you that. It has to do with his technique because, again, I think he's a little bit too fast and explosive for his own good, and he's like a rabid dog trying to hunt down his prey in run support and when he is trying to tackle, and that can lead to missed tackles from very agile and opportunistic type of running backs and rushing styles. But he can be a force defender in your nickel personnel. He can. He has the mentality to do so. And he was used that way while he was at Kentucky. He brings big hits. I wish he wrapped up a little bit more consistently. There are certainly times where he just lays hits like that. Like, that's awesome for the highlight reel, but you got to wrap up. Here he just goes low right when the tight end catches it. Tight end probably thought he was really cool too. I know I would have. One-handed catch, like, yeah, man, I'm awesome. Oh, crap. Helicoptered. Phillips knows what he did. We're going to see some option. Get to the outside. And while Phillips has big hits like we saw a little bit earlier, I wouldn't say he is this great tackling type of cornerback. I think when he has momentum and the receiver catches the football, yeah, he can make these devastating type of tackles when the receiver isn't really expecting it. But most of the time, the hit power of Andru Phillips it's modest. It's more, I'm going to wrap you up and swing you to the ground. That's more of his tackling style, which a lot of cornerbacks are like that. I'll hold you up and pursuing defenders will come and help you out. But it's more of a mentality. It's a willingness. It's a feistiness. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. He gets very low to the ground here to avoid that contact and make this tackle before the running back gets into the end zone. And that's the mentality I'm talking about. That's also the oomph that he doesn't necessarily always bring, right? You can see how he holds him up and then drives him back. A bunch of his teammates come over. You'll see that a decent amount on his tape. Then you have plays like this where he goes low, gets to the outside of this. Like, I love this play. He gets to the outside of 10. 10 is trying to block him. Get to the outside, dip your inside shoulder, set to the outside, force either a cutback or bring this damn ball carrier down to the ground. And he does that. Receiver tries to spin outside of him. When he's the contained defender, he'll contain for you. That's a nice tackle. You see another, like, I'm going to swirl you around and then throw you to the ground. Use your momentum of me swinging you to get you down to the deck. Unless he goes low, like we're seeing here. Barely seeing because of the way the video is set up. This is against Ricky Pearsall, the first-round wide receiver of the San Francisco 49ers. See, Pearsall does a really good job coming back out of this break. Phillips over pursues a little bit too much when he's the outside option. When you do that, smart wide receivers will exploit you for doing so. And Pearsall recognizes the coverage and realizes that Phillips was a little bit too aggressive in coverage. Here against Xavier Legette. He did not have a great game against South Carolina. He kind of gets fooled by that little double move. And you can see, gets baited into it. The lack of discipline, the lack of patience. Needs to fix that. And then once he realizes, crap, my responsibility is back there, and I was over eager coming downhill, a little bit too aggressive. He plays with an aggressive nature. And he just tries to lunge and gets grabby, and it doesn't matter because the receiver's wide open. Here, hips get turned around by Legette. Completely turned around. And Legette just works right into the blind spot. I appreciate the speed turn and the fluidity and all of that, but when you give that much of a cushion and when you're that overzealous with overplaying your own hand and trying to anticipate what the wide receiver is doing or buying what the wide receiver initially sells, then you put yourself in a position to where your athletic ability can't even bail you out. I know I've said it a couple times, but those are some of the problems throughout his tape. I've also saw this 2 times. I think I cut the other film up here where I don't know if he fully understood what his assignment was. He is the nickel defender. It looks like a zone drop. You have a clear out concept where the deep third is getting cleared out, and then the out route from the number 2, nobody handles him. And in this defense, and I don't know the defensive call, I don't know what he's being told. I know none of that stuff, right? But it does seem like he is supposed to get the curl flat. He doesn't. He just stays on that hash, and it leads to a post wheel type of completion where the safety is the guy who has to come down and handle that responsibility. So I think that was a mistake on Andru Phillips' part. And I wouldn't have put that in if it was a one-off, but then I saw this play where it was something similar, where it looks like he's the outside guy in his own technique. You have a tight bunch, condensed, all inside the hash, and the outside receiver from that tight bunch runs an out route. And Andru Phillips is the last player in the out route. And wide open, easy pitch, easy catch, first down. Here's that play against Jalen Hyatt. I did add it to the video. Oh, I love when I do stuff like this. Here's the play against Jalen Hyatt, top of the screen, number 2 wide receiver. Andru Phillips over top of him, slightly to the inside. This gets me excited about Jalen Hyatt. And Andru Phillips, look, he's going to match the vertical route if this was a vertical route. But watch how good Jalen Hyatt is at selling that route. And watch how he kind of takes like a 1 step to the inside. You see that right after the 40? It's like at the 38-yard line, takes like 1 step to the inside and then just explodes. Just a little bit of inside shoulder dip, a little bit of an inside shoulder dip, and then decelerate just past the 30-yard line. Once Andru Phillips is committed, you create about 5 yards of separation, Jalen Hyatt, because you sold your vertical stem that well. Andru Phillips was like, here's my wallet. You can have my wallet. Would you like my credit card number? But the ball never gets to Jalen Hyatt, unfortunately. But Jalen Hyatt, man, with Malik Neighbors, I hope we get to see stuff like that. Because he has this. That's controlled speed right there. That's all I want. It's controlled speed. Andru Phillips has speed. It's not yet controlled. I think he has flashes of control in coverage, as I pointed out, with some of the ways he positioned himself and some of the crisp footwork that you did see, but it's not nearly as consistent as it has to be. Controlled speed by Jalen Hyatt. All right, let's get back to Andru Phillips. Look, he just poorly misjudges that jump. I just don't think it's natural for him quite yet. I mean, no interceptions in college is bad, but it's not like he had a ton of snaps in college either. He had 710 snaps this last season, but he only started 4 games prior to that. He had less than 400 snaps in the previous 2 seasons. So it's something we have to take into account with a lack of interceptions. It's not as much experience maybe as we would like, but it does not seem natural for him at the catch point. And that's a rough look on that one play, but it's just one play. Here we see him in press, doesn't use the jam. Love the stance, low squatty, keep everything low, balanced. But then he gets mossed. That's such a great play by him up until the catch point where he allows his wide receiver to elevate over the top of him. He can't locate the football. There's a subtle tug by the wide receiver, but you can't allow that to happen still. This is like another play that kind of showcases that he's not great at the catch point. You don't really see it until the end, but he doesn't turn around and he doesn't locate the damn football. Here he gets beat to the inside. And the throw doesn't get home. I think he gets tipped. But Phillips is able to get back into phase that they're getting toasted on that play. And here are some of them tackling woes on Andru Phillips' film. He just needs to comport himself in a more restrained manner as a tackler. As you'll see, there's a lot of just wild technique. I'm going to throw my body at the ball carrier and do everything in my power, kicking my feet in the air, throwing my hands up to try to make this tackle. You can see he gets pissed off when he doesn't execute his assignment. It's not for a lack of caring. It's not for a lack of trying. It's certainly not for a lack of toughness. But he has to be more technically sound. He needs to wrap up. He needs to drive through. He needs to do a better job taking angles of approach and not be a heat-seeking missile 24/7. Because then plays like that happen. You can't have that happen, obviously. He missed 23.1% of his tackles this past season. He had 15 missed tackles. It's a lot. That needs to get corrected. That can't be something that happens in the NFL. Let's just play with a little bit more discipline. That issue can be mitigated. Because I want a tough player. He certainly has that. But you just need to be more of a sure tackler. And that's my breakdown of Andru Phillips, the cornerback out of Kentucky that the New York Giants selected at 70. I'm okay with this pick. Look, there were probably players that I had higher on my board than Andru Phillips. I understand the baseline athletic traits. Cornerback was a position need. But honestly, there are aspects of his game that just have to be ironed out, as you guys have seen throughout this video. But still, he has a dog mentality with all the necessary athletic traits to thrive. Just need Jerome Henderson to develop this young man. Try to get him out there. He's going to have a role year one, possibly as the nickel. He could be a kicked outside. The versatility is also appealing, but he's not yet a finished product. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. Please like, subscribe, comment wherever you're watching this, and also head on over to bigblueview.com where you can check out all of our written content. I'm Nick Falato signing off. Take care of each other and have a lovely day.